Okay, this is a video for 04.04 lesson 04.04 and 04. And the assignment 04.04. So this is what your class looks like when you first open it. You're going to scroll all the way down. When you first open your Spanish 2 class, you're going to go all the way down to lessons. You're going to open lessons. And hopefully it loads faster than mine. Go to module 4 right here. And go to 04.04 right here. And this lesson is getting you ready for your first rough draft writing. So 04.04 is Escribamos una narración. Okay, so una narración, you just started an internship with a successful Spanish-speaking publisher. For your first assignment, the publisher asked you to write a rough draft of una narración. It's a tale. Okay, if you scroll over that, it'll pop up and give you the English. Let me move me over here. Your narración will be a short fairy tale about a character of your choice. Check out the sample she's given you to use an inspiration. We're going to look at this example in a minute. But this is El Ogro y la Princesa, the ogre and the princess. Okay, so go ahead and go to the next section and read. It would be good to read through that paragraph. Step 1, you're going to choose your character. Your mission is to write a rough draft for una narración about a character of your choice. Okay, so you can write one about El Dragón, La Príncipe y la Princesa, or El Hada Madrina. Okay, this is like fairy godmother. Okay, so you've got your choices here. One second. Okay, so you have these 3 characters that you can base your story around. You can go here, click next. Okay, step 2 is talking to you about what you've learned. You're going to use what you have learned. Okay, so these are based very much so on the requirements for this assignment. So you've got your classic fairy tale beginning, you've got your first description of your main character, and we're going to go through all of these kind of helpful steps and these hints right here to help you form your rough draft. Okay, this has a guide, and I would really encourage you to use this. I would encourage you to save it so that it's a Word document that you can edit, and I'll show you kind of what I've edited one to use as a guide to help you, and I'm going to put that in the weekly updates so that you have that document if you want to use it to help you form your rough draft. So, save or print that if you want to use that. And if you save it, you will get a Word document, which will be something you can edit. So I would encourage you to get that one. Okay, so then go to the next section up here. Click next. And this is your requirements. So what's really important about these requirements is that you are graded on whether you meet the requirements, and there's a rubric that you're graded on. So, and the rubric is posted. This is your rough draft, so the rubric is less important for this one, but for 04.08, you are graded specifically on a rubric, so it's really important to make sure you have each requirement. Now, this looks like a lot, but a lot of these requirements can be met with like one sentence. So this rough draft does not have to be very long. It's not really long, and I'll show you what the rough draft looks like, an example of a rough draft. Okay, so your requirements are all of these, and I'm going to go over these in just a minute when I go through the guide. So just making sure you read through the requirements, you know what they are. You're going to see these again in just a minute. So I'm going to go ahead and go to next. And this is where you are going to, it's going to prompt you to do your assignment. If you want to look at the rubric that you will be graded on, this is the rubric. They're always posted in these writing and speaking assignments. So if you want to know what's really important, to get max points, you need students correctly use vocabulary words and expressions. To get max points that was for vocabulary. For command of language, you need to use correct conjugation of regular and irregular verbs in the imperfect tense. So I need to see that for you to get full credit, and these need to be verbs that you're using in our lesson. Okay, so and what you've learned in last semester and this semester so far. So using vocabulary and grammar that's not something that we've learned this semester or last semester it's hard to grade that because it's not based on what we've already learned. And sometimes it can get a little advanced, and sometimes it might be highly influenced from a translator. Not always, but sometimes that is how it comes off. Okay, so then you've got spelling and grammar. To get full max points, you need to use correct grammar and spelling to clearly describe the character, setting, and plot of the fairy tale using complete sentences in Spanish. So that's total points. This is worth 30 points, so it's a big assignment. It's worth a lot of points. So it's really important to make sure you know the requirements and know what's expected. Okay, so I'm going to open up the guide that I created, and I'll pause video and open that real quick. Okay, so this is the guide I created to help you with this assignment specifically. So this is when you go into your assignment, and I can show you that in a minute at the very end. When you go into your assignment, this is what you're going to see as the prompt, and there's going to be a box below. Here, I'll just go ahead and show you that. Hold on. Okay, so when you go into 04.04, the assignment, this is what you're going to see. And this is exactly what I've put into the document. You have your instructions are to write the rough draft of your fairy tale. You may copy and paste the accented and special characters from this list. Your rough draft should be written in complete sentences in Spanish. Include the following requirements. So these are your big requirements here. I'm going to go through the document and show you kind of what the guide that I've created to help you with that and try to help you with all these aspects. So your first requirement is a classic fairy tale phrase to start the tale. Okay, so right here on your guide, it says the beginning, classic fairy tale phrase. So these are two classic fairy tale phrases to start, and they're both, once upon a time. Okay, they both essentially mean that. So in your example, you might say, I'm going to highlight it here, había una vez, like once upon a time, and this is your time to add to your own story details after this section. Okay, so you're going to introduce your story. And right here is continues. Okay, so once upon a time, un ogro grande y verde que vivía en una casa feísima en un lugar muy lejano. So once upon a time, a big and green ogre lived in a house, the ugliest house in a land far away, very far away. Okay. Okay, so your first description is your main character. This is your second requirement, a regular or irregular superlative adjective to describe your main character. So you've got your main character down here. You can use a regular or irregular superlative adjective to describe your main character, and you learned about these in 04.01 and through 04.02. So you can review those note guides if you need to. Okay, so el ogro era el más grande. So the ogre was the biggest. Okay, and remember that they're using imperfect past tense, and this is your irregular ser, which is like your is. So in imperfect past tense, it's imperfect irregular. And that's past tense. It's going to sound in English. It's going to be was. El ogro was. He was el más grande. He was the biggest. Okay, so your second description, then you're going to go to your third requirement. Which your third requirement is a regular or irregular verb in the imperfect tense to share where your main character lived. Okay, I highlighted it right there. So you go down, and this is where you're going to talk about your setting. Okay. Había una vez un ogro grande y verde que vivía en una casa feísima en un lugar muy lejano. So this is describing where he lived. This again is I was just giving you the example of just how to start a fairy tale up here, but it's the same sentence from up here. So again, this is like two requirements in one sentence. So so combining those two requirements. So you've got había una vez. So this is like once upon a time. Un ogro grande, a big and green y verde. Un ogro grande y verde, a big and green ogre. Que vivía. Okay, vivía is imperfect. Okay, because he lived somewhere continuously in the past. So we're going to use imperfect. Okay, que vivía, this is lived. En una casa feísima. So he lived in the ugliest, in a house that was the ugliest. And en un lugar muy lejano. Okay, so a land far away. Okay, muy lejano is very far. Okay, very far away. So that is your setting. You're setting up your setting. All right, let's go to our next requirement. Our next requirement is an isimo or isima superlative adjective to describe the other character from your fairy tale. So you've got to introduce your next character in this requirement. So our secondary character in this example is la princesa. So we're going to say la princesa era bellísima. Okay, so she was the prettiest. So very simple sentence there. Make sure you're using imperfect. Okay, era is a good verb to use when you're describing someone. Physical, and so she was the prettiest. She was the most beautiful. So we're using imperfect there. That's irregular imperfect, but it's imperfect. I got to use that form. Okay, then your next requirement is a regular or irregular verb in the imperfect tense to describe what the character did. Okay, so this is where you're going to kind of get to like the plot of your story. Okay, so we've got down here, we're going to go, this is where probably like the nuts and bolts of your story is going to be. The bulk of your story, I mean. So you can be as creative as you want here. I mean, you can give us a lot of details. You can give us minimal details. This is 3 sentences, but this is 4 sentences, but you can make it less than that. You don't need to make it really long, just as long as you get your point across. It's fairy tale, so, it can be fantastical, wild, be creative. Okay, so it says el ogro. So this is your plot. It says try using regular or irregular verb in the imperfect tense to describe what the character did. So that's what the most important thing you need to remember is that what we're looking for is that you're using imperfect tense, the imperfect verb tense. So if that's irregular or regular, whichever one you want to use, whatever works with your story, but make sure you're using that tense. So el ogro quería a la princesa. The ogre wanted the princess. La princesa era bellísima. The princess was the most beautiful. Era la más bella de todas las chicas en el castillo. So she was the most, era la más bella de todas las chicas. She was the most beautiful of all the girls in el castillo, in the castle. Pero la princesa quería al príncipe encantador. Okay, so the princess wanted the Prince Charming. Okay, so pero la princesa quería al príncipe encantador. So, but the princess didn't want him. She wanted the Prince Charming. Okay. El ogro estaba tan triste que se fue a vivir a una cueva muy lejos. El ogro estaba tan triste. The ogre was very sad, was so sad, that que se fue a vivir, that he went to live. And this is preterite. It's not imperfect. Okay, so because he went to live one time, he went to live somewhere. Okay. The went is the one time in past. So it's not an ongoing action like you would use imperfect for. It's a one-time action. So that's why we use preterite here. Que se fue a vivir a una cueva muy lejos. So he se fue a vivir, he went to live a una cueva muy lejos, in a cave very far away. Okay, so that's kind of your plot of your story. And like I said, you can get as creative as you want it there, but we need to see that I need to see that you're using the imperfect tense correctly, whether it's regular or irregular. And if you need to use preterite, then make sure you're using preterite tense as well. Okay, the end. So your last 2 requirements, these are really important.